All right. How's everybody doing? It's been a minute since we've done one of these. This is Rebelcast number 49. And coming off of Spotlight Atlanta, we're here today with our guest, GFunky, who made the team, who went with us, and I got to meet and play with. It was, I mean, look, I'll just let the man speak for himself. GFunky, how are you doing today?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you for asking, and shout out to both of you, Max and Athena. I'm doing great. Event was an awesome experience, being a part of the team, being part of all the preparation, time, and hours, and just the general fun of the collective that is the Rebellion, and of course the Rebellion team, just in terms of like the camaraderie, the quality play. It's been an absolute wonderful couple month stretch here of quality Magic experience, is what I would have to say.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. It's been an experience for me as well because I've made no secret if you've watched me that I pretty much do all digital Magic or I have for years. Since not playing in like competitive Magic since like what 2016 I want to say it's been a long time. So this was an experience for me as well. Athena was there, rocking out.
Mhm.
I want to say a different deck than everybody else, right? Like you were the Oculus
Yeah.
champion. How did that experience go for you?
I mean, it was really fun to just like meet everyone. It's like I said, like at the kind of at the beginning of this, I more did this for like the community experience than the actual competition. I'm not a huge fan of paper magic, and it kind of solidified it at Atlanta a bit. It was fun, like it was a fun experience. I don't think I would want to do it again in
Right,
terms of
and we
just
can
being
get
a player.
we can get to that. I definitely want you to open up about that and let folks know because our audience is a mixture of folks, right? Like coming out of the pandemic and even before then, when Paper Magic was kind of the competitive scene was kind of dying out a little bit for a minute there. People were questioning how long it would last towards the late 20 teens, like in 2019. But it kind of resurged, I want to say, in the last year or so. And, there's some mixed feelings about that. So I definitely want you to get into that. But let's talk briefly about, let's go over what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, the focus is going to be the spotlight, no pun intended, is going to be on our experiences in Atlanta. So we're going to talk about Atlanta a little bit. I come from Georgia. I grew up most of my life in Georgia. I've lived in a triangle around Atlanta, whether it was going to college, growing up in high school in Lagrange, and now living in Athens, Georgia, working for the University of Georgia. I've danced around Atlanta. I lived there briefly as a child, so I know a little bit about how rough and crazy that city can be. But yeah, I have some feelings about that city as well. So we're going to talk about Atlanta. We're going to talk about the actual tournament itself. Star City Games. I might mention briefly just comparing how it was to DreamHack when DreamHack held the official license to do the official things. Um, so we're going to talk about that experience. We're going to talk about the crew, what it was like to hang out as a team for the first time, this trial run of the Rebellion competitive team, and I do want to touch on just like what that experience was like, getting to meet everybody. Coming from online, really being one of the only. Probably the only digital LGS around the MTG Rebellion. So we're going to talk about that, touch on that, and then finally just look ahead to what this taught us, what lessons we learned, regarding how to run a team and how to carry that out in the future. And I'll make a couple of little announcements about that. So those are all the topics we're going to touch on today. I want to start. Let's talk to G Funky first. Look, what were you? I want to start before we even talk about Atlanta. What were your expectations going in? How did you feel about it going in, and then coming out? Did those expectations get met? What sort of things changed for you about how you perceive like competitive Magic play? What was your overall experience?
I absolutely love paper play. I came from a background of playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh for
Oh
well
hell
over
yeah!
10 years. Went to nationals several times to some small success, never making any tops, which is still a huge goal that I managed to achieve here at Spotlight, which I'm very, very proud of. But I love paper play. That's kind of how I got my introduction to TCGs. I've been playing since I was, maybe 13, 12 years old, back in 2010, 2011. in Insector Rabbit format back in Yu-Gi-Oh. I played all the way through 2020 and rested my case there. I just got to the point where the game just was not fun for me, where I
Mhm.
felt like too many games ended on turn 0.
Oh,
So
no.
I took a nice little hiatus for a little while. So this is some background about me. And getting back into Magic, what most specifically got me into it is my buddy was like, "Hey, come to Commander Night." And then of course I got my competitive itch after a little while where 6 board wipes later, I'm ready to go to bed. But I got back into 60 card competitive Magic play shortly after, back in, I guess, fall of 23. And since then, I've had an amazing time playing Magic, and Magic has been on the up and up since. So over my time, went from like a 9 to 10 person store championship playing standard to now I'm going to RCQs that have well over 40 people in them here in the Philly
Mhm.
area because that's where I'm from. And the vibes, the energy, like right after Spotlight, first RCQ, everyone there is already on top of the innovations from the previous weekend. Everyone's already super competitive with update deck lists. It has like a vibe, an energy to it where it's super competitive. The energy, everyone's upbeat. People are like, dude, standard's in a great place. It's been an absolute fun time to get back into standard, let alone 60 card Magic. Right? It's a great time to get on board. And Spotlight specifically, I mean, it was almost 1,500 people there.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
vibes, just in general at the event, I felt like most of the people I talked to, super friendly, upbeat. I talked from people who just started playing competitive Magic maybe 4 or 5 months before the event, and I spoke to people who've been with the game since early 90s, since it really became a thing. So in
Mm.
general, like, it was a ton of fun to experience, like, I guess what used to be GPs, but now spotlights in full form. And the vibes were good. It was a very diverse crowd and it was a very welcoming crowd. And I couldn't
Hell yeah.
be more excited to see more of this come to be with different formats and all types of new sets. So
Hell yeah. I'm glad that you reported a good experience overall. And it sounds like Philly keeps up with the meta pretty well. And I can report a similar vibe in Atlanta. Um, that they pretty much are up to date. Like if we report on the state of the meta, for example, it's already happening there. So it's very competitive for sure. Okay, very cool, very cool. Let's talk a little bit about Atlanta. Athena, I know this was your first trip to Atlanta. So what did you expect coming in? What did you hear about it, and sort of did anything really stand out about the place to you?
So this is more than just my first trip to Atlanta. This is my first trip outside of the state I live in.
Wow.
So this was like a huge jump for me. Um, it was honestly like really fun. It's funny because like it doesn't. Atlanta seems just like a slightly cleaner Cleveland, at least the downtown area. Um, yeah,
yeah,
Okay, I've been to
yeah,
yeah.
Cleveland.
Hmm.
yeah. Like like downtown Atlanta just kind of reminded me of home, so I did not feel out of place at all. Um, it like it was cool to see like just like subtle differences that like I wouldn't expect. Like the stoplights look different. I thought those were like kind of universal. I would not expect like traffic lights to look different in different states. But yeah, like as for the city itself, like it was kind of cool. I got like the visitors experience into a big city. Getting to try a couple of the different food places. Getting to kind of walk around and seeing the sights. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. You mentioned the food. What did y'all eat? Because I know GFunky, was there anything that you ate in Atlanta that stuck out to you at all, or was any different from like where you're usually at?
Tina and I got in. Some of the team was already in Atlanta, so we were kind of getting in at different times. And we were like, "All right, I'm hungry. It's lunchtime. Where are we gonna go?" So we went to this place called Ted's Montana Grill. They're known for bison, and the owner apparently
It's
has
pretty
a
good.
bison farm, and they has his own like fresh farmed vegetables. I got bison short ribs. We went back for a second time. They were so good. Like the first time I was there, you pick up it comes in the nice little short rib rack. You go to pick it up, the bone just slides right out. And it was just like melt in your
Oof.
mouth, delicious. Just could not say better things I mean, it says enough that we were all just quiet and just really enjoying ourselves, especially after 9 rounds of Magic.
Mhm.
Hell yeah, hell yeah! I gotta take everybody next time to one of the like Brazilian steakhouses in Atlanta. We didn't get to do that.
Ooh.
I regret that, but we gotta set that up next time. For sure. Man, there's a lot. I could talk forever about food in Atlanta. I know one of the more contentious things is that we don't have the best pizza, and places up north like Ohio, Philly, New Jersey, a lot of those places have a lot better pizza than us, and I'll concur there. I'll agree there. But yeah, there's a quite a variety of Mexican food there as well. I know we got to on the initial night we got to go to one of my favorite taco places. We didn't get to spend enough time there, and that was fine. Everybody kind of got in late and push us out. But next time, I have some other places that I definitely want to take everybody if we ever come back to Atlanta. So I'm happy that y'all had a generally good experience, at least eating some of the food there. Um,
Mm.
so I've been to Atlanta back to back years for Magic events. World Congress Center has been the host to all of those events, whether it's DreamHack or Star City Games. It looks like that's going to be the spot where they're hosting everything when it comes to Atlanta. What did y'all think just about the event, the size, like the vendors? What did y'all think just in general about how Star City Games handled it and the Congress Center, how they handled it?
I mean, I was absolutely impressed. Just the whole way around. We also we took an Uber there the first day, like GFunky and I did. So we we ended up getting stuck on the C building when we got dropped off, and we had to walk all the way around like 25 minutes
Ugh.
to get to the A building, asking for directions the whole way. So
Same
that was
building.
it's yeah, I'm gonna say I've never felt
25
more
minutes.
lost inside of a building before.
Yeah.
Like oh my goodness. But as for like the convention itself, like it was super fun just seeing like how many people were there. Um, I'm a huge people person, so just getting to talk to strangers like the whole day was pretty awesome. I picked up these like awesome monk tokens from one of the vendors for my Oculus deck. Let me pull one out real quick.
Hell yeah, that looks sweet.
From the Monastery Mentor monk tokens. These things are awesome. Like they had a bunch of like awesome tokens to just find there, and just other like. It was also cool to like see like some content creators there.
Hmm.
Jim Davis was there. Voxy was there. Um, so yeah, it was just like great time. 10 out of 10. Would do it again.
Oh yeah, and I can report that I was gonna say like DreamHack, very similar experience. We didn't have enough MTG creators at DreamHack compared to Star City Games, but that's probably because it was more billed as like an esports thing rather than a like strictly a Magic thing. Magic was just like a third of what was going on. Um, I will say the upside of it being Star City Games is it's heavily focused. It can be on Magic. We had other games there like Lorcana, some other games that were trying to teach people how to play. I saw some of those booths, um, but the fact that it was focused around Magic for the most part, that was a huge upside for me in terms of like going there and being able to focus on competitive play. If you fell out of the main event, like the day before and the day after, even for day two, there were still like lots of different ticketed events where you could, win prizes off the wall. A lot of different formats, a lot of different varieties. They had like two-headed giant there. They had legacy precons, which I really should have done that honestly, but I missed that chance. But that sounded like a cool idea. If you never played a format, they had decks ready for you there. It was interesting. It was interesting to see. I think the downside and why I missed DreamHack was in between like rounds or in between events. At DreamHack, you could go and play video games like arcade games and pinball or see cosplay and that kind of thing. And there wasn't enough of that there. But I guess the argument is that that's what the Magic cons are for, like the ones in Vegas and Chicago. Um, I guess that's kind of more or less what that's for. And I plan on attending one of those one day, but it always felt like just a little bit out of reach for me. I don't know. What do y'all think? Do you think that like there were enough artist boosts? Do you think the cosplay thing is the thing that attracts you, or are you just really there to play paper Magic? What's your thing? What's your take, G Funky?
So as somebody who's been to two different Magic cons, I would say those events felt much larger.
Uh huh.
And they were way more densely. I mean, it was like you were shoulder to shoulder in a lot of areas of the venue. It was just that packed. like MagicCon Chicago last February. Crazy, it's almost been a year. I literally people were like scalping badges for thousands
Ooh.
of dollars. It was insane. People like, and you can't do that, for the record. They have protections that people were trying anyway, of course.
Yeah, yeah, of
But
course.
it was crazy to me how much draw. And going there, the artist booths, I mean, there must have been, I couldn't tell you how many off the top of my head exactly, but at least over 10. And the amount of people who would wait in line for 5 to 6 hours plus just to get a signature from from their favorite artist was something that like that was a complete eye opener for me. Going to
Mm.
MagicCon Chicago, looking at Atlanta and in particular the Spotlight, I felt like it was a particularly well run event. There was enough to do, but clearly the focus was competitive paper play for the most of the weekend, which was great. I mean, that's my jam. I
Yeah.
do love all the other different aspects of Magic, which makes Magic such a inclusive and awesome community to be a part of. And there was definitely elements of that. Like if you went for the weekend and you weren't a diehard standard player, there was plenty for you to walk around and experience or just spectate and just really enjoy the weekend. It's not the same as a MagicCon, but it's definitely worth the trip. And I appreciated that it didn't cost you money to get in. You could just freely come and go. And if you had a friend, a relative, whomever with you, who maybe wasn't the same level of Magic player as you were, or maybe even not engaged with the game or just starting to be engaged with the game, I felt like because you could just come and go to the event without having to spend money for a badge or deal with the scalping like I mentioned about earlier, where like if I didn't pre-order a badge by a certain time frame for $80 to $100 plus in some cases, right, depending what level of pass you got. There's a lot to that. Now, speaking of which,
Yeah.
the MagicCon offers promos and things that like the Spotlight doesn't offer. So there's pros and cons to it, but in general, I felt like the event was the venue had decent food options that weren't overly expensive. There was bathrooms available. There was a water fountain available. Plenty of variety of vendors where there was a plenty of cool things. They had the one vendor which had all those really cool, funny T-shirts. So if you really just want to continue to swag out your Magic apparel, there was a good diversity, I felt like, at the event, and it definitely felt like if you were definitely a diehard Magic fan, it was a good opportunity.
Very cool. Very cool. Athena, this being like the first major thing outside of your state, how did you feel coming into it? And just do you think like the addition of more vendors, more cosplay, more spectacle would have been too much for you or not enough? Like how do you feel about that?
I'll be honest, I was fully expecting like cosplayers. I don't think I saw one. Um, I not like super disappointed at that. I don't know. That was just something I guess that like I had pointed out to my fiance who went with me, was that like I
Mm.
just expected there to be like more cosplay and things like that. Um, but as for like the actual like venue itself, yeah, I mean it was fine. Like I like you said, I've never been to anything of that size, right? So it kind of felt like doing like new student orientation at a college or something where like everyone's like running around like crazy, like
Yeah.
trying to figure out where they have to go for like certain things. And
Yeah.
it was yeah, the whole experience, like I said, it kind of just reminded me of college. Like in a weird way, it kind of just reminded me of being in a college again.
I want to validate that because I had an experience right before round two. I left my playmat at the first table. I don't know, jitters, whatever. I left my playmat, and it's the one. It's a copy of this one that uses a mouse pad over here. If you've ever seen me stream with it, it's from DreamHack when the Rebellion went to DreamHack. So it was pretty special to me. So I went to the Lost and Found to go grab it, and I told a judge before I got up from the round two table, I was like, I gotta go get my playmat. And he pointed out where the Lost and Found was, and so I went over there, and the guy took forever to like cross me off my name off the spreadsheet, and I'm like, my God, just let me grab it and go. And so I went, it took like 7 minutes. I went back to the table, and then a different judge was walking by and was like, looking at looking at his watch, just like, I was about to give you a round loss. You need to tell a judge before you get up to do something like that. And I'm like, I didn't argue. I was just like, yeah, Okay. So in that way, it did kind of feel like I was late for class or something. It was a little weird. Uh, anyway, so
Demerits.
yeah, demerits, man. Ready to take a round loss because I lost my playmat. It's like, oh, you have to make me feel so bad about it, you know. But anyway, yeah. So it was strange. People rushing to, going down like it was a hall line. To get to their table, and the numbering system. Remember, you even mentioned something about how weird it was. Like you were walking in one direction, and the numbers were going up one way and down the other, and it's like
Yeah,
it was really confusing. Like the 300s were next to like the 600s, and it didn't make any sense. And it was weird.
it took me a good while to figure out like what the structure was because one was like in the middle of the venue and then it like spiraled outwards.
Yeah, yeah, it was really weird. I think I do want to briefly comment before we talk about the tournament itself and our experience of playtesting and all that. Before we get to that, I wanted to make one comment. So one of the things that I experienced was going in. My MTG Melee is the one who gets the contracts for like organizing everything digitally for these events, for the most part. And so I came in. I couldn't find my name. I couldn't find my round name. My round, the table that my round was at, round one, on the first day, and I was already late because my lift got lost. And didn't know where to drop me off at. I was like, it tried to drop me off underneath and like the parking structure underground and like in this dark alley, and I'm like, this is definitely not it. So we had to drive around for another like 10 minutes, and I was almost late, and I was rushing in, and I couldn't find my name, and I'm like, huh, why is that? And I gave them my name. They're like, that person's not registered at all, and I'm like, what the crap? So I'm registered as max damage in MTG Melee. And I'm like that also shaves some time off of me getting to my round in time. And when I finally get there, the judge looks at a piece of paper, looks at me and goes, "You're max damage," and like smirks at me. And I'm like, "It's a streamer name." It was terrible. It was a little embarrassing, but yeah, that was a strange interaction that I think could have only happened because of MTG Melee. So I'm gonna blame Melee on that one. It was back from when I
Being
used to
late
do
in
the
real life.
yeah, it was back from when I used to do the pizza box tournaments, and like I registered as max damage because I was streaming them and all that, and so I don't know, it's so weird. But enough about like the venue and the organizers and all that. Let's talk about the actual meat and potatoes of why we were there. We were there to win and place as many people in the top 8, top 60, top 100. What was it? You would get a promo at like top 120 or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, so
128.
Foil, Terror the Peaks were prized out to the top 124 players.
Hell yeah.
Cash payout was to top 64, and I think it started at 32 to 64. I think got like $300 in
Hmm.
cash, and then it like kept going or doubling basically every sort of tier up you went. All the way up to I think first place was like I don't know, was it 20K or something like that,
Yeah,
or
it was
10K
some.
plus a bunch of
I think it
crazy
was 10.
stuff.
Yeah, 15K,
Yep.
something like that, in that range. So we finally decided on a deck, really two decks. Let's talk about that. Now, I want to start with Athena because you had the unique experience of playing a different deck. So talk to us about your decision making, how you decided, on that deck specifically, and the way that you built it, because you had a unique take on the deck for the time.
Yeah, I mean, I went in, um, I mean, even to the start of our playtesting, wanting to work with Oculus because I felt like it was a really good deck that not enough people had really experimented with enough. And just throughout the playtesting, it just kept looking better and better and better. Um, I think at one point we had like outside of the red matchup, we had like an 80% win rate or something in our playtesting. Um, so like the whole like last couple weeks were just how do we beat red with this deck. Um, it was I actually liked the deck choice for the tournament, despite going 2-3. My first round, I lost to my alarm clock. Uh, I had woken up late, unfortunately, and tried to rush to the venue. I was gonna take a game one loss, and I just took the whole round loss just so I could like refocus. Um, yeah, like round two, I played against Dimir mid range, comfortable matchup. Uh, round 2 and 1. Round 3, I played against Golgari Ramp, which is like the nightmare matchup. Like
Yep.
anything deadly cover up is like the nightmare matchup, and I won that one 2 and 1. And then I narrowly lost 1-2 to Mono Red. I almost 2-0'd, but I punted. And then I just got ran over by Gruul. And at that point, I was 2 and 3, and I just dropped. I like the deck overall. I think it did really well for like the situation it was in. One less punt and against Red, and I would have 2-0'd. The Drake Hatchers felt amazing, like playing against like Dimir and against like Golgari Ramp, and even against Red, just like pumping out. Like I think against the Golgari Ramp deck, I made 3 Drake Hatcher tokens at one point, just the one card by itself, and forced a board wipe. So that felt really good. I think where our meta call was correct was that we were expecting a lot of black-based mid-range to try to beat red, and we were expecting there to be lighter graveyard hate. But the reason for the Drake Hatcher build over the traditional one was because we thought a lot of the tier 2 decks, like Invoke, Boros Mice, Mono White, Domain, we thought there'd be like a pretty decent number of those and all running Rest in Peace on their side. So the Drake Hatcher plus cantrips were like a way to beat Rest in Peace. And it turns out like people just weren't even running Rest in Peace in their sideboards at all. So like you saw traditional Oculus get I think 5th. Yeah, that was like the disappointing part. Like if we had like read that a little bit better, maybe that would have been better. But yeah, still despite the 2 and 3 record, really happy with how it turned out.
Athena, on that note, I thought it was particularly interesting throughout the event that we were talking about a omniscience combo deck that was floating around because we saw counters kind of go to the wayside. We heard about different reanimator strategies with Valgavoth floating around the room. It was just really interesting about how some of these little really innovative, very, I don't want to say outlandish, but just very seldomly played innovative strategies floating around the room, which I think is really cool and also a sign of a really healthy standard that people are like, well, if everyone's going to shift to this extreme, I'm going to challenge that extreme. And there was some pretty cool instances of people being successful doing that, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, for sure. I played in the 10K on Sunday after dropping day 1. I went 1 and 3 in that one. The match that like got me to one, like my third loss that got me to drop was against Mardu Reanimator that turned 4 Valgavoth to me 3 games in a row. So you know, like sometimes they just have it, right? But it's cool seeing like those types of decks. I played against Jund Ramp in that tournament. And then I played against like I won against Cookies, I lost against like Jund Ramp, I lost against the Reanimator deck, and I lost very narrowly against Dimir Midrange.
I think the damn Omni combo deck, I called the first week that we saw it, I was like, flash in the pan, and then the second week that we saw it on State of the Man, I was like, definitely flash in. I don't know anymore. I don't know if it's flash in the pan anymore because nobody's doing the graveyard hate at all, even after a few weeks of it being a thing.
Yeah, but like now we're a few weeks in, and like still nobody's doing graveyard hate, and these graveyard decks still aren't tier 1, right? So I guess that just proves you don't need it. Like
you're probably right. Yeah. You're probably right.
Format is just very fast.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and that leads me to my question. GFunky, how did you feel about the Gruul version of Mono Red ish being the other deck that we selected? What were your thoughts on that?
As somebody who has stayed away from aggro for most of my time playing Magic, because I guess historically it's just not something that I'd really see myself as something I'd want to play. I think throughout our very thorough testing, which I appreciated, it became very apparent to me how much of a deck building challenge mid range was for this event, outside of the innovations that came to be with Dimir for the event by adding in this town isn't big enough for the two of us sort of innovation, right? Of including Storm Chasers and both, that card as well. I think what really came to be was that Dimir could either build to beat one section of the meta versus another section of the meta, or just kind of be very sort of overly balanced to some ways, and it felt really
Hmm.
hard to tweak your deck to be efficient. So what kind of came to the conclusion was that, well, red deck wins is kind of, steamrolling, but the problem was is you sometimes didn't have enough staying power against grindier matchups where you were really tested in terms of your resource and how many cards you could see. And that's where the team kind of came to the conclusion that we really want to be red deck wins in terms of the efficiency of both your mana, your removal spells, your damage output, to where sometimes, in a sort of meta where it's so diverse and open, um, instead of trying to solve to beat some of those different matchups, why take a different approach and just be incredibly efficient and proactive? And we were having some crazy 80% win rate with some sort of red variant. And it came clear to us that by adding Questing Druid into what is essentially red deck wins, we can really get, the advantages of having a little bit more grind, as well as being incredibly efficient and proactive in a format where it's really, really hard to solve for what we found to be a pretty diverse and challenging field to deal with.
Yeah. I didn't feel comfortable in in that spot of playing mono red personally. And that's probably leads us to our next section as well. Is a lot of this for me and probably for y'all as well is stepping outside the comfort zone and being able to pilot just about anything, because in playtesting you need the best piloting choices possible. And so to get there, right, we played with open hands, we took our time taking turns. Um, but for me, that experience was kind of new because prior playtesting experiences were a little bit different for me, where we just tried to play every deck possible as much as possible, and you really can't do that. And I think that was something that Darth Rictus tried to argue for in the group, right? Was that we need to focus and hone in on specific decks. How did y'all? And I'll ask Athena first. How did you feel about? I know we were on a shortened time period because this is kind of a trial run. Hopefully, in the future, we'll get to do more. But how did you feel about how quickly we shifted? Whether we got it right or got it wrong, especially on the meta calls for each phase. How did you feel about sort of the process that we went through?
So this process that we went through was actually one that I built alongside Rictus. This was something we like basically Rictus messaged me like, "Hey, you have like coaching experience from League. How would you run a team?" And we kind of just like worked on everything together. I feel like it worked out really, really well. I mean, to
Hmm.
place 5 people into top 200 of a 1,500 person event was really, really awesome. Um, I think our testing turned out great. We did miss on the Dimir Bounce deck and the Selesnya Cage deck.
Hmm.
But we were pretty much prepared for everything else. We had limited testing against Pixie because of how new that deck was. But yeah, I think that like overall, um, overall we had a really good read on the meta. We knew we didn't want to play black based mid range because it was going to be very popular, and you'd have to try to tech for the mirror, and then that would mean you'd like lose the point of playing the black based mid range decks, which was to beat aggro. Um, and we knew that Dimir was kind of shutting out a lot of the slow decks like mono white, which was another like contender kind of earlier on for
Hmm.
one of our decks. Um, yeah, I think overall I'm happy with where we landed. I'm sure GFunky can attest to this. Like we all as a group kind of made like changes to decks as we went. We had obviously with 10 people testing different decks, you can get a lot of information really quick. So yeah.
I'll turn to you, G Funky, for your comments as well. But I just want to say that it was new to me. It was more efficient than anything I'd ever tried before. Trying to run any kind of small competitive team. Um, and I'm looking forward to seeing what changes, what shifts we make, and really the continuation of this process and how it looks when we have a little bit more time to plan and know a little bit more about the meta, and especially who's going to be on the team for the next run. So I just want to say I'm excited about where it's going, and I can't wait to participate. in future events. But GFunky, what is your take on sort of the phasing, the way that we went about honing down which decks we played, and especially with consideration to the amount of time we had to prepare?
I know I'm really proud of the team, especially with a sort of condensed 6 to 5 weeks, essentially, right? Give or
Hmm.
take because of the holidays.
Yeah.
I was really proud of the team. No, I think it was a particularly strong challenge to try and fit in that much magic in such a short amount of time. However, I feel like the challenge is necessary, and this is something that the team discussed at length internally in terms of, hey, the meta changed a lot in just that 5 weeks because I felt like the incentives to play Magic, especially standard, are at a all-time high in terms of, post-COVID Magic play.
Yeah.
And the fact that almost anybody can engage here in the game and the format's in a really healthy place. Yet it was kind of funny because it went from like a super concentrated Dimir black based mid range meta where you had a bunch of red, black based mid range seemed to evolve. And then it's interesting in those final couple weeks how much the meta really started to take shape. And
Hmm.
what we really found was that again, black based mid range felt like a trap and a total deck building challenge because you simply just couldn't get it to a good spot. And as somebody who loves black based mid range, it was definitely a point of our conversation earlier where like early going into testing, I had told the team, I was like, hey, this is usually my happy place. I'm going to spend a lot of time working on it because that's what I know best. And that's how, of course, I can contribute to the team at a high level. But I also was happy with myself and others on the team who, by the end of this sort of journey, we were kind of like, well, I really did throw the whole kitchen sink at it. And we were like, well, I started bringing up the idea of what if we add the sort of bounce package, but we were like, we have such a good 75 to 72 cards for a red or slash Gruul deck list, however you want to interpret our Gruul deck or red deck. We felt so confident in it. And I even was like, hey, putting aside my Magic experience, I think this is the right thing to take because of how much due diligence over 5 weeks we put into this, as well as the amount of confidence I put in both Cody with a K and Rictus and everyone else who was really, really honed in on aggro. I was like, all right, it's time for me, who's never played aggro at this level, to pick up this deck in 4 days. And between the combined efforts of having a team who can help me learn the heuristics, the basics of the mulliganing, just like learning good sort of magic sequencing and thought processes through that open hand sort of matches where we're just sitting there diagnosing the game state, walking through every single potential line, so that when you get into the games in a Magic tournament, you can sit there and we're like, all right, well, diagnosing the game state, remembering what different parts of the game state to pay attention to, because it's simply, let's be honest, we're all human. You're not going to be able to constantly be aware of all the things going on. And to your earlier point, Athena, like digital reminding you, hey, there's a trigger here. Would you like to use it? Yes. You don't have that in paper. So, like the
Yeah.
night before, all of us jamming at the testing house, it's like, Cody, got to remember the trigger. Hey, Athena, remember, we have to check, or count graveyard resources. I mean, I'm just coming up with random examples there for example's sake, but it's interesting how much those different little things come to play. But by when it was all said and done, I felt like we felt really good. Like, hey, mono white or some sort of concoction of white control could be a player here. Domain and Convoke felt like gambling simulators.
Yeah.
Obviously, they do incredibly powerful things in the format, arguably the most powerful things in the format, maybe next to a Kaido start, right, at the time. We were just like, with those colored mana bases, it just felt like over 15 rounds of Magic play, are you going to get enough good average hands to feel like you have a shot?
Right.
And I'm glad where the team landed in terms of, hey, let's play a deck that kind of cuts out some of that sort of nonsense and frustration. And I got to say, all day, I felt like there was only maybe 2 games all day I lost that were just like, there was just nothing I could do from like I had to mulligan down to 5 and, you know, just there was no chance. And
Yeah.
it felt like the team really did have a well baked.
Very cool. Talk to us about the team. What was it like hanging out, meeting these people that you've talked to all the time in the Discord, and just see online? What was it like making that transition? How did you feel coming into the testing house?
Static. It was cool to see how well the energy translated from online banter to like it was just seamless. It was great. It was good to see that like because we had been working so diligently and pretty much talking to each other. I mean, I was playing Magic online basically 6 days a week for 3 hours, sometimes 2 hours a night. Um, how well that sort of translated into just in-person chemistry, and it didn't miss a beat. It was a lot of fun, and the energy like just made for it just felt like you're hanging out with a huge group of friends from school, and it was just like the vibes were it was special. It was good. It was a lot of fun.
What was your most memorable moment from the whole trip?
Is this podcast appropriate is the problem, right?
You guys skip over like three or four to
um
get to the appropriate moments.
right. That's where it's a little tricky, right? um
Were
no,
you gonna
I
bring up the meal ticket or something?
Oh my
bounce
god.
bounce, man. But
Oh my god.
what I will say
Oh.
is I gotta say the camaraderie, especially at the end of both day one and day two, was awesome. And this was one thing I wanted to mention in terms of like having a team. For me, from my perspective, it was really nice because I had some lows where I had some pretty rough losses or losses to myself, especially as somebody who had never played aggro like this ever. Learned aggro in 4 days, was what I was saying all weekend. Was that like I didn't let the lows get too low because I had people to
Mm.
talk to after the round and be like, "Yep, this is what you should have done. This is the way to think about it." But dude, how many more rounds of Magic you got to play? Don't get so low on yourself, right? You're still in it. You know what I mean? And it felt good that my lows didn't get so low because I had people to turn to support me, and that's like priceless, right? Priceless. And in terms of the highs, it felt like I could live the moment in a really, really healthy way because
Yeah.
everyone you've been practicing with at this level understands how hard it is, how rewarding it is, and it's great to savor the moment. And we also know that it's a team effort. Like all of us who made it that far, myself included, wouldn't have made it that far and being that prepared if it wasn't for the collective of the rebellion. And I owe a good deal of gratitude for that experience, as well as just how fun it is, how much of an achievement it is for us as the rebellion that like we achieved what we did. It was the amount of fulfillment. It just felt rewarding, and it was really cool to to be with all of you. It was awesome.
That's really great to hear. Athena, what was your most memorable moment if you can list it?
Um, my most memorable man. That is actually a really hard question because I've been thinking about it like this whole time now. um, I have to say the most memorable moment was just like between rounds, just like sitting with the team, like talking about the games we were playing, watching people get so excited about their wins. You know, when you win in a cool way. I know, like when I ranted forever about Draycatcher beating Golgari Ramp. I know that a lot of team members were very excited about like their like really close wins. Um, someone maybe it was GFunky. Someone got excited about like torching their role token to like hit their nemesis for 3 or something like
This
that to kill the opponent.
Rictus.
But yeah, just like hearing everyone's like passion about the game, it was just such an awesome moment. Um,
That's really
or
cool.
set of moments, I should say, because it was between both days.
That's part of what makes a team special for sure in my experience, and that makes it so much more preferable to like going by yourself for sure. For me, it was meeting people in our audience that were just like, "Hey, you're that guy who does that video every week on YouTube," and then some people even knowing that I was max damage. That was new to me because in the past, like people would come up to us and like, "Oh, I recognize that Rebellion jersey. You do this." But they wouldn't know exactly who I was, and this year was different. People were like, "You're max damage." I'm like, "Oh my god, okay." How are you? And it was really interesting. Also seeing other content creators, C Favretto was there as well. And anytime I run into him, like we joke that we're rival friends, because we face each other on Arena all the time when we're both streaming, and it just goes back and forth the win loss rate. So I love running into him in person. It's really cool. So those are kind of my highlights of the trip.
The
But the
other
big
highlight.
thing, the big
Go
thing
ahead.
for me was getting to see all of you in person. But Cody with a K, getting to meet Hunter. Hunter is just such a sweet person. And Griff being there was amazing as well. I got to go. Griff got to be a part of the very first time that we got together and met up at DreamHack, and just being able to see him again and encourage him to be a part of us. With how busy his life has been, he had to quit streaming for a while. Hopefully we'll see more of him in the future. I really want to present him back to our audience. He's a really cool personality. But I mean, just all of y'all are great. All the rough edges were pretty worn down when I got to see y'all in person. So it was like we're crazy online, but in person it was a little bit different. It was a little sweeter and it was cool. But um we're almost running out of time. Let me just really quickly go through sort of our future plans for the Rebellion team. It's no secret that we have these qualifying tournaments. We had our first one at the end of last year for this trial run of the team. We're going to have another one again. I've been told towards the end of February, maybe early March, for the qualifier for qualifying for the team. I know that I can't say any details yet, but I know that specifically as far as like who's going to be on the team, if you've performed, you retain your spot. Only a few spots open up, and that's what the qualifying tournaments are for. So if you're someone in the audience who hasn't joined the Discord for some reason yet, come check us out. We're a competitive MTG community. Not that like I know I get on my soapbox about casual Magic, but there's definitely a place for that. As has been said here, by GFunky, that Commander kind of got a lot of people back into Magic, into the same room with competitive, like competitive minded folks. And I make it no secret. I think that this false dichotomy of winning games and having fun, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. And hopefully what this team will show and will teach is that when you get together and you try to win as a team, like that's fun. We don't have to just play casual to have fun. But there's certainly a place for all types in the Discord and our Rebellion. So come check us out. Whatever level of interest you have in Magic, we're there for you in terms of providing you people that you can play test with, providing you ideas for brews. We have a space for brews definitely in there. So come check us out. Links in the description. All right, so that pretty much does it for the show. That's really all the time we have for today. I'll go ahead and let Athena tell you about the fact that we're sponsor free.
So this episode of the Rebelcast is indeed sponsor free. So if you'd like to contribute to what we do and make sure we stay in the game as long as possible, consider making a purchase in our merch store or joining the Rebellion.
All right, and final thoughts, GFunky, you get to have that little spotlight. You have any final thoughts, anything you want to say to the audience before you go?
Playing standard. Standard's in a great spot, especially paper, online, doesn't matter. Community's in a good spot right now. I think the format's in a really healthy spot. I think now's better time than ever to get into the game and start learning. So huge encouragement to everybody who's kind of on the edge or debating, should I really make an effort to go to the RCQ this season? Make the effort. It's a blast.
Preach. All right. Until next time, untap, upkeep, resist.